What's going on, everybody? How we doing? Today we're going to be recapping the historical action-adventure film, The Last Legion. Spoilers ahead. 475 AD in Rome, and Romulus Augustulus stands atop a tall statue as he watches his soldiers, led by their commander Aurelius, return to Rome. Aurelius is angry, having been called back to Rome for seemingly no reason. He'd rather be on a battlefield somewhere, leading Rome's armies to victory, but instead, he's been assigned to the personal guard of the soon-to-be crowned Caesar. As Aurelius complains, Romulus sneaks into his tent and quickly becomes captivated by a suit of armor standing to attention. Aurelius catches him and, not knowing who the boy is, drags him out of the tent, throws him in a pool of water, and then holds him down as to remove his thieving hand. It's the only way he'll learn. Romulus begs, giving his word that he wasn't going to steal it, that he just wanted to look. Well, this seems to amuse Aurelius, who thinks a street urchin is beyond being able to give his word. But Romulus assures him,
I would not lie to you.
And the notion seems to amuse him enough that he lets Romulus go. It's at this point that Imprisonment appears and makes sure to belittle Aurelius for the way he treated the child, and Aurelius shoos him away. But when Imprisonment refuses to leave, one of Aurelius's guards attacks him, only to be sent to his back with ease. Furious, the guard lobs a stone at Imprisonment, who catches it with a single hand and somehow turns it into feathers. Well, Imprisonment is more than he seems. So Imprisonment leads Romulus into the palace, where they're able to overhear Romulus's father, Orestes, arguing with the leader of the Goths, Odoacer, who seems to think that he's owed 1/3 of all of Italy for the deeds done in service to Rome. Orestes and another senator, Nestor, laugh off this claim and send the Goth leader on his way. As might be predicted, Odoacer isn't too pleased with this result. With the meeting over, Romulus makes himself known to his father. Orestes is furious that Imprisonment took him outside the palace walls, assuming it to be too dangerous for the soon-to-be Caesar. Imprisonment doesn't seem to mind, which only angers Orestes further. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to join our expendable squad. Now, despite his young age, Romulus is the next in line to be crowned as Caesar, leader of Rome. And the next day it's done in a grand ceremony. But the whole thing's a farce. And when it's over, Romulus makes the point that although he's the most powerful man in the world, he isn't even allowed to stay up late. Now that he is Caesar, Romulus is introduced to the leader of his personal guard, Aurelius. Neither of the two outright acknowledge their previous meeting, but Romulus makes sure to throw Aurelius's words back in his face.
Thank you. I only wanted to look at it.
Just to really rub it in how close he came to harming the man he was supposed to be protecting. Almost immediately, Orestes fires Imprisonment from his service and goes so far as to kick him out of Rome entirely. Aurelius even warns that if he sees him again, it'll be with the tip of his sword. With that, Imprisonment begs Aurelius to look after Romulus before he finally leaves. And it doesn't take long for Odoacer to extract his revenge. At nightfall, his men are at the city gates, charging through them and intent on taking the city. Aurelius is a master of the sword, though, and does what he can to keep the hordes at bay. His men, too, all equally up to the task. But they are outnumbered, and there's only so much they can do, which isn't nearly enough. The real problem is Odoacer's second-in-command, Wulfila. After he slays Orestes, he takes it upon himself to capture Romulus. And he does too. That is until Romulus sticks him with a knife and flees beyond his grasp. This clearly infuriates Wulfila, who then sets himself to hunt down Romulus. Meanwhile, Aurelius wakes up to an empty and all but destroyed city. He seeks out Nestor, who tells him that the city's taken, the boy's missing, and Aurelius's men have been captured and are about to be executed. So with the city now under his control, Odoacer meets with an ambassador from Constantinople, asking that the king now recognize Odoacer as the ruler of Rome. Next, he has Romulus brought to him in chains. His intent is to kill the boy and end his bloodline. But then Imprisonment suddenly appears. He uses trickery, a trained crow flying through the court, to convince Odoacer not to kill the boy, and that doing so will turn the city against him.
Will they respect the leader who so feared a Roman child?
Despite Wulfila's protests, Odoacer decides to spare the boy and keep him imprisoned for the rest of his days. And up next, we see the ambassador of Constantinople meet secretly with Aurelius and Nestor, informing them that Romulus is both safe and being taken to the island prison of Capri. Aurelius promises to rescue the boy, and the ambassador says that if he does, the boy will have safe harbor in Constantinople. They just gotta get him there first. In order to save Romulus, Aurelius will first need to free his men. Using one of the personal guards of the ambassador to Constantinople, Aurelius tracks them to a forest just on the outskirts of Rome. There he feigns at being a bounty hunter, having caught the Constantinople warrior trying to kill Odoacer. But this was all part of the plan. The Constantinople guard flees, which forces the others to give chase. This allows for Aurelius to free his men and then help the guard dispatch the others. Not that he needs the help, he manages to get the job done himself, proving his worth to Aurelius. So now Romulus is on the way to Capri with his Goth captures, and Imprisonment is along for the ride. Romulus misses his parents, but Imprisonment reminds him that as long as he continues to love them, they'll never be far. He then reminds him of his destiny. Romulus doesn't think he has a destiny.
I should have died too.
He's a king without a kingdom, but he informs him that all creatures have a destiny, especially Romulus. On the way to Capri, Aurelius wakes to find the warrior from Constantinople gone. And not just gone, but like his clothes are folded neatly by his horse. Some further searching and he finds him bathing in a nearby lake, and that he is in fact a woman. Her name is Myra, and not only is she skilled with a sword, but she's rather easy on the eyes too. At least Aurelius seems to think so. So now at Capri, Wulfila continues his feud with the young Romulus, offering him water, and then he spits in it, only to have Romulus throw the water back in his face, which makes Wulfila hold him over the edges of a cliff and threaten to drop him. But Imprisonment interferes with him, thus saving Romulus's life. And even then, Wulfila promises to end Romulus before his time is done. Wulfila is bitter at having been bested by Imprisonment and orders him strung up over the cliff. And as he goes to do this, Wulfila spies a burn scar on Imprisonment's chest in the shape of a pentacle. But when Wulfila asks what that is, he pretends that it's nothing. He's then pushed out, left to dangle over the cliff. And as he's hanging, he sees a similar designed pentacle etched onto the ground in the courtyard, right where Romulus stands. He realizes that this must be the place where the sword was brought all those years ago. He screams for Romulus to go to the temple and find out what Julius Caesar is guarding. And the boy does just that, finding a hidden room that looks not to have been touched in years. There he comes across a statue of Caesar, and hanging off this statue is the sword, the one of legend. Meanwhile, Aurelius and Myra reach the island of Capri and begin their ascent up its high walls. As they go, Imprisonment sees them coming, but he also realizes that if anyone else notices them, they're dead. Using his extreme skill, he manages to swing himself from his position and to one of safety. Then he manages to knock one of the guards off the high walls just before being seen, and send the other one flying just as Aurelius and Myra reach safety. Now on the island of Capri, Aurelius, Myra, and the others get about saving Romulus. Aurelius manages to find the boy and lead him back to where the others fight off his captors. They then flee to the sewers, which will lead him to their boat. But there's a problem. In order to escape, someone needs to stay behind and beat back the Goths. Aurelius volunteers, seemingly sacrificing himself for the boy. But Myra can't have this. Whether it be for love or glory, she makes sure that the others are safe, and then heads back to save Aurelius. It's a good thing too, because even though he's rather skilled, there's just too many of them. Too many for Myra too. The two warriors are surrounded and it doesn't look good, with them having no choice but to throw themselves off the cliff and into the waters below where the boat waits. The sword is now on everyone's lips. Wulfila finds its original resting place, reads the prophecy, and realizes what it means. Imprisonment, too, reads the engravings on the sword, and although Romulus doesn't know what it means just yet, Imprisonment assures him that one day he will. So with Romulus now safe, Aurelius meets with Nestor and those from Constantinople in hopes of providing safe passage to the city. Unfortunately, Nestor soon reveals that not only has Constantinople retracted support for Romulus, but that it's now supporting Odoacer as the new emperor of Rome. And to make matters worse, Nestor reveals himself to be a supporter of Odoacer too. As is to be expected, a fight soon breaks out as Nestor tries to capture Romulus for himself. It was a fool's errand though, as Aurelius and his men are far too well trained to fall victim to such betrayals. Aurelius smites Nestor where he stands.
It's their friendship.
And that night, they discuss their options, or rather, lack of options. Nearly the entire world is off limits to the small party, and it doesn't take long for them to realize that their only salvation lies in Britannia, with the Northern Legion, the 9th. As such, they begin to head there immediately, crossing the Alps and sailing the English Channel to land on the shores of the northern island. Almost right away, they realize something's wrong. The first village they come upon had been burnt to the ground, and Ambrosius reveals that this had to be the work of a local warlord named Vortigern. But they put that behind them and head for Hadrian's Wall, where they hope to find the 9th Legion. Of course, there's no sign of the Legion anywhere, and it's realized that they've long since abandoned their post. Aurelius, Romulus, and the rest of them are on their own once more.
Should have made us stand in Rome.
So little time passes by and a group of men who reveal themselves to be remnants of the 9th Legion arrive at the wall. They explain to Aurelius that the 9th Legion was never defeated, but instead disbanded long ago. Now they live in Britannia, raising families and farming the land. It might be seen as good news for Aurelius, but it leaves him in the exact same position as before. Meanwhile, Wulfilla follows Romulus and Aurelius to Britannia and meets with Vortigern. And there he tells him of the famed sword and what it means to the man who holds it, that he will rule the world. Knowing the power of the sword, Vortigern strikes a deal with Wulfilla. He can have the boy as long as Vortigern can have the sword. Days pass in the village, and Aurelius, Romulus, and the others spend their time together, and amongst the villagers. Aurelius and Myra continue their flirtations, using battle training as a means to test each other's limits. There's clearly something between them, and they both know it. Romulus, too, meets a village girl named Igraine, who he takes a liking to. It is a peaceful period in an otherwise tumultuous life, but it can't last. Igraine walks with her mother and brothers just outside the city when Vortigern confronts her. He tells Igraine who Romulus really is, and then commands her to go back to the village and tell the rest of the villagers, but not before killing her brothers and mother. And she does just this, runs back to the village to give that message and reveal Romulus's true identity. Romulus doesn't deny it though, standing up and admitting who he is.
Whatever is decided here will be my destiny.
Aurelius, too, stands by the boy and proclaims that a final battle will see the end of this. He beseeches the men of the 9th to join him and his own men by the wall, where they'll stand to fight and defeat Vortigern once and for all. But of course, the men of the 9th are scared, not wanting to leave their families and risk their lives. As such, they turn down the offer, and once more, Aurelius is on his own. Before they leave, preparations and goodbyes are made. Igraine gifts Romulus with her brother's armor, while Aurelius and Myra finally sleep with one another. Aurelius and his men make preparations at the wall, and he gives a big speech, riling the men up. It's a good speech, but it's just words, as the men know that they're outnumbered and have little chance of surviving that day. And then, the battle begins. Thousands of Britons charge from the forest and towards the walls. They carry ladders, reaching the encampment and beginning their scale with little real resistance. On the walls, Myra and the others do what they can to fight back the attack, but there's little hope. The numbers are too many. But then they hear the sound of marching boots and trumpets in the distance, which are of a Roman army. The 9th Legion has arrived, and with it, so has victory. They march onto the field of battle and almost immediately begin to turn the tide back the other way. Meanwhile, Ambrosius has led Vortigern to a secluded location outside the walls where they duel. It's revealed that Ambrosius knows Vortigern. Apparently, Vortigern's the one who gave Ambrosius his scar. But he manages to fight back and this time gives Vortigern his own scar, pushing the man into a fire and setting him ablaze. Somehow, Romulus has ended up on the field of battle by himself, and Wulfilla has seen him. Excited for his chance at revenge, he charges for the boy, intent on killing him once and for all. But Aurelius sees and manages to get between the two, defending the boy and fighting the vicious barbarian. Now they're dueling, but Wulfilla has the sword and uses its power to overwhelm Aurelius. It's pretty close, and Aurelius takes some serious blows, but he manages to use his superior ability to overpower and defeat Wulfilla. Yeah. With the battle won, and as a sign of things to come, Romulus hefts the sword over his head, announces that there will be no more war or blood,
No more blood.
and throws the magic sword with all his might. It flies through the air, out of sight, and lands upright, speared into a single stone. Years have passed now, and Imprisonment walks with a young boy, Arthur, as he tells him the story of Aurelius and Romulus. He tells Arthur about what happened after the battle, that Aurelius and Myra raised Romulus as their own, and how he became a wise and loved ruler in his own right. He took a Celtic name, Pendragon, and Arthur now realizes that this is the story of his own father. The boy seems to think this makes the story not true, or at least exaggerated, but Imprisonment argues that the story is a true one, the true story of a hero, and if there's one thing the world needs, it's more heroes. This was a recap of the film Last Legion, produced by De Laurentiis Company and released in 2007, directed by Doug Leffler. It starred Colin Firth, Thomas Brodie Sangster, and Sir Ben Kingsley. Pretty wild ride, and an interesting retelling of the beginnings of the Arthurian legend. Which part of the film was your favorite? Let us know with that hashtag cinema recap in the comments.